the Bears with 4 wide receiver signees in this class, and I believe all 4 are now officially signed in this class. So that's a big deal, is to get another big chunk of your offense set up and on the dotted line. And so let's roll through them here before we head into our second interview of the day that will hopefully be able to run from start to finish with running back Caden Knighton. But we talked about him and his running mate Michael Turner, the guys that will be more catching passes, although that will be in the cards for the running backs as well. But their main job, catching passes, and then blocking for guys like Michael Turner and Caden Knighton, the wide receiving core. And let's start off with Taz Williams Jr. of Red Oak, Texas, and Red Oak High School, 6 foot, 190. He was another big-time pledge at the time. I remember his announcement day, the celebration when he picked the Bears. But you talk about a big-time offer list. Michigan, the defending national champions. Alabama, multi-time national champions, most decorated program in history. Texas A&M, Penn State, the list goes on with big-name programs. Auburn, you have Colorado, Florida State, Georgia. I mean, like you could just roll through them here. That's Taz Williams' offer list, and the Bears are his destination. So let's start there.
He's the most offered prospect in the entire country. I mean, the offer list is insane. It's one of the best offer lists you're ever going to see from a prospect. Really good player, and he bursted on the scene his junior year, even a little bit his sophomore year. And heading into this year, there were huge expectations for him to have a big year, and I know he wanted to have a big year as well, but he tore his meniscus just 2 games into the season after posting 216 yards and 2 touchdowns in those first 2 games. Was on pace to have an awesome year, but of course it gets derailed a little bit by injury, which was, of course, tough to see. But Taz is a really, really good prospect. He's, again, in that 4-star category for me. He's a guy who's top 5 in this class for sure. I think what he brings to the table is, a guy that, if he can get back to 100% quickly, which he's told me, he's trending in a very good direction there and coming back stronger. But if he can get to that point, I do think he's the most likely of their receivers in this class who won't redshirt, who will play a big role immediately. That's my expectation from him. He'll enroll early as well, so he'll get kind of set up into, getting himself back in game shape really quickly at Baylor, which I think is a big thing as well. But yeah, in general, really good prospect, elite offer list, one of my top 5 prospects in this class, a good route runner, a guy who I think can play inside or outside in Jake Spavital's offense, which I think is very important to have guys with that kind of versatility. And that makes him a huge get for this class at one of the biggest, if not the biggest position of need.
Rolling through the wide receivers here, also out of the state of Texas, Pearland, Texas, Shadow Creek High School, which Baylor fans ought to be awfully familiar with. They pulled a number of prospects from Shadow Creek to varying degrees of success over the years. But Ashton Jones, 6'4", 185, more of a bigger body wide receiver, a 3-star prospect, as most of this class is, but had offers from the likes of Florida and Arizona State, Oregon, Vanderbilt, Wazoo, UTSA, Memphis, among others. So Ashton Jones, wide receiver, Shadow Creek High School, number 2 on the list of 4 wideouts that we'll talk about here in this segment that the Bears are inking today.
And he is the longest commitment for Baylor. We're coming up on a year since he committed to the Bears. He's a true outside receiver, which was something they need in this class. A very gifted prospect at 6'4". I think for him, the production hasn't been insane, but when he's gotten opportunities, he has played well. I mean, he only had 24 receptions this year, but he turned that into 429 yards and 5 touchdowns. So really productive when he got chances. Again, the outside receiver was something they needed. He's long, he's strong, he's got the ability to go convert contested catches. He's a deep threat as well. I just think he fits kind of everything they need in this class. He's been committed for a long time, stayed loyal to the program, and I think will be a nice addition to this class. And maybe not a guy who I think is going to play a lot his first year, but I do think he's going to make a big impact during his time at Baylor.
So I started talking off about a Shadow Creek wide receiver, and there's a pair of them. Talk about how they've dipped in the past on Seth Jones, who transferred out. Kyron Drones, same case there, but a double dip of wide receivers at Shadow Creek this year. And the trio of Texas wide receivers is rounded out here by Jacorey Watson, Pearland, Texas, Shadow Creek High School. Also, pretty nice offer list, the likes of Boston College and Arizona State and Colorado and Michigan and LSU and Ole Miss and Texas and A&M and Oregon. And that's all pretty nice and well and good, and you like that. 5'10", 175. Jacorey Watson rounding out the trio of Texas wide receivers and the duo of Shadow Creek Sharks.
Consistent theme of really good offer lists in this class and going out and beating really good schools for prospect. Jacorey had a rough year. I think part of it was due to injury for the most part. He's going to come in as a wide receiver. I could also see him playing defense potentially. I just think he's a really special athlete, and he's going to get on the field wherever he can, and whether that's at receiver or potentially safety. I think there's a lot to his game that's very intriguing from an athletic standpoint. Him enrolling early, I think, will give him an opportunity to kind of, again, figure out where he fits in best into Baylor's scheme. But yeah, really good prospect, guy that played quarterback for a few years at Shadow Creek because he was forced to do so. And he won a lot of games for them there at Shadow Creek as well. I like him as a prospect, great offer list, and a guy who, again, was a 4-star prospect at the time he committed.
So there is a trio of wide receivers, but we're not done there. There's actually a quartet, but 3 of them from Texas, 1 from out of state. The Bears with a couple of out-of-state signees in this class, and one of those out of the state of Florida with Chase Collier out of the Bowl School in Jacksonville, Florida. A 3-star prospect, had offers from App State, Arkansas State, among others as well, including Duke, Iowa, Kansas State, Michigan State, Tulane, Vandy, Virginia, and the list goes on. So Chase Collier will round out our offense first look here, because we did a handful of players with the running backs and the quarterback and Edward Griffin. Now we're getting the receivers, and so here we are. This is the 7th player that we've talked about. We're 1/3 of the way through. We'll get into our next conversation in just a moment, but this is like the 1/3 point, and it looks like they're closing in, getting close to having this whole class signed. So that's a good sign, and that's what you thought was going to be the case earlier. So, let's kind of round out this first leg of the journey here with Chase Collier and a talented wide receiver out of the state of Florida.
Speed is the first thing that comes to mind for Chase Collier, and this is a Dallas Baker find out of Florida, and a guy who Dallas Baker really liked. They built a great relationship. Chase decided to commit to Baylor pretty quickly. Again, you mentioned some of the offers, but you go through it: Arkansas, Duke, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan State. Like, he had really good offers. A lot of programs that really valued his speed. He's a guy who's got personal bests of 10.78 in the 100-meter, but I think he's even faster than that. Ran 21.91 in the 200-meter. I think his biggest impact early on is going to be on special teams. I think he's going to be potentially a contributor early on in the kick return and punt return game, and he just brings a different dynamic because of that ability to stretch the field. So very curious how he gets utilized, but I think special teams is kind of where he fits in early on, and then development-wise at the wide receiver position with his speed.
Garrett, are we able to